Six evils, also called six pathogens. It sounds pretty bad, and it is. Chinese wisdom tells us that there are six evils or six pathogens that exist in the external world, so outside of our body. These forces are constantly attacking us and trying to get in. The six pathogens are wind, cold, heat, dryness, dampness, and summer heat. Nowadays, we find viruses, bacteria, germs, all kinds of things like that. Now, in ancient times, they didn't have those concepts, but they did have the concepts of the energies. So the manifestation is virtually identical. So let's dive in and see some of these six pathogens. First one is wind. So the characteristic of wind is that it moves around. That's the same thing in the body. So if you have pains that move around, that might come from wind. Wind from the outside has gotten into your body, and then the pain moves from place to place. Wind itself can cause things like facial paralysis, like if you get one paralysis on the side of the face. That sometimes happens. Probably what's going on is while you're asleep, you have an air conditioner or a fan or something that's blowing right on your face. It enters through the pores, it enters the channels, and it causes that paralysis of the face. Wind itself does not do a lot of damage. It's going to be that wind brings other pathogens with it. One of the biggest things is that you see wind will carry cold with it, or wind will carry heat with it. So the common cold, in ancient wisdom, they would call that a wind cold. Cold is pretty easy to understand. It's things like chills, a runny nose. So cold can be achy joints, different pains like that. You can just think of what cold is like. Cold is slow. It doesn't really move. So any kind of aches, things like that, often come from cold. So arthritis could certainly be from cold. That's going to be a more chronic cold though. You're not going to get arthritis overnight, but if there's cold that you haven't been able to get out of your body, that could certainly cause arthritis. Cold usually rides on the back of wind and comes in. So you're pretty much all the symptoms that you see of a common cold are generally going to be a wind cold. Now, it can also transition into a wind heat, or wind heat can enter the body. So heat is going to be sore throat, fever, things like that. Acne is also considered heat. That's heat rising up to the face. So basically what we're talking about now is the heat that comes from the outside. A lot of these pathogens can be created inside, but if it comes from the outside, it's going to be, the flu is actually a very good example of wind heat. Pretty much all the symptoms you see with the flu, the sore throat, the yellow mucus, the fever, that's pretty typical wind heat. Summer heat is the, I don't want to say it's funny. Summer heat's bad, but it seems interesting that there's also a summer heat. So summer heat, as the name suggests, only happens in the summer. You can basically think of it as sunstroke. That's pretty much what it is. So if you're out in the sun for too long, maybe you don't have enough liquids, you don't have enough shade, you don't have a hat, those symptoms that you get, that type of fever comes from summer heat. Now, fortunately, summer heat is pretty easy to take care of. The best way to get rid of summer heat is by eating watermelon. Dryness is not too difficult to understand either. It's going to be chapped lips, dry nose, dryness in the mouth. It's a lack of fluids is what dryness causes. So dryness is actually in and of itself is this pathogen that comes in and sucks up a lot of the fluids. It can also cause wrinkles if you have that long term. It just sucks the fluids out of your body. Dampness can also come on the back of wind. That's pretty common. So if you're in an area that has high humidity and the wind is blowing around a lot, you can definitely get dampness to come into your body that way. So common manifestations of dampness are going to be, you can just think it's like in your body if you're just all bogged down with water. So definitely swelling, you're going to feel tired. You're not going to want to get up. You're not going to want to work out. You're not going to want to move. You're probably not going to have a lot of energy overall because of dampness. Now, you can get dampness from two ways. One is going to be externally. So if you live in a very damp region, or if you go to a damp region, and especially on a very windy day, the dampness will enter with the wind. If your pores open, it will come in, and then you'll just feel real heavy. Your body, you just won't be able to move very well. Another way that we can get dampness is if we have a weak spleen and stomach. So we have a weak digestion, and then we eat food that our body has trouble processing, and the food itself has damp characteristics. Damp characteristics are sticky things like milk, right? A lot of sugar, thick sugar, sugar drinks, all of those are dampness. It goes into the body. If the spleen stomach is not very strong, it has trouble processing that. And then too, you will have a lot of the same symptoms. Your body will feel very heavy. You won't feel like you have a lot of energy. That can especially happen if it comes from a spleen stomach. That will especially happen after you eat a meal. You feel way too full. You feel like your body's all soggy and damp. That's exactly what's happening. So before you go, please lightly hit subscribe and gently tap on the like button. We wouldn't want any of those to get any of the evil pathogens. They're very sensitive to this. Wind is what enters into your body through actual wind. Duh. Can we get off wind?